First of all, I'd like to ask, is the situation such now that there's no escape from this New World Order? Can one, let's say, move from one part of the country to another part of the country to get away from the problems?
Well, Bernard, you might get away from the problems locally and for a while from the general problems, but they're going to catch up with you. You can't get away from it, especially if you're any sort of a practicing Catholic, because wherever you go, whatever church you go to, it's going to be embroiled in one or another of the divisive factions that now separate us. We should touch on this, why it's there. We must go into detail about some of them. So the first thing, really, my counsel is to you and to anybody else is know what is happening. The news is more dire than that, but it's better, if that's possible. First of all, the main news is this: it's not going to stop. We're heading downward, but the question is into what? Into what? And there's no doubt about it, we're going to see further disruption of Catholic life. We're going to see new manifestations of Catholic vigor in a minor way in isolated communities. We're going to see no big national or international Catholic subversions. None. Not in my lifetime, not in yours, and you're a young man. But it won't be. We're heading into something else. We're heading into a period of the end, really, you could define it two ways. It's the end of Catholic times, and it's the beginning of pagan times. End of Catholic times means that the influence, the political, cultural, social, religious influence of the Church of Rome is at an end and will shortly die, and will be only admitted insofar as the influence of the Mormon Church is admitted, or the influence of the Holy Rollers is admitted, or the Mennonites. Will just be one of a crowd. Our prestige and our influence is on the way and is going out, and we're shortly going to be reduced in diplomatic power, because as you know, at the present moment the Pope has 117 embassies on Vatican Hill, 117, and he has 80 of his own representatives in 80 countries. That's all going to be cut down by 2/3. It's going to disappear completely, and the Church will go along with that, because they will say that we must meld into the world and be like everybody else. And they will be like everybody else. That's the curse of it, they'll find out. They will be like everybody else, and not exceptional people, the chosen people of Christ. But that's the first thing to remember, that this is the end of these Catholic times. It's the advent of pagan times. And what we mustn't be tantalizingly hypnotized by the fact that there are dire enemies of the Church. There are people who want to destroy it, who want to take it over. They want to secularize the whole thing and make it a useful socio-cultural toy for government and for the New World Order. That's not what's happening. And there's a parallel that we must draw, and it's this: it's with Christ. If you listened to the normal apostle on Good Friday evening, when he knew Jesus was dead, and he knew he had been bled like a pig until he had no more blood to lose, and his lungs collapsed, and he collapsed and died with a loud cry, and then he'd been buried in a borrowed tomb by his pal Joseph Arimathea, who was rich, bought the tomb for himself and then gave it to Jesus. What a fate, Joseph Arimathea, and his career was so interesting, and we must touch upon it if we have time. And by Our Lady and Mary Magdalene, the women, the poor pathetic women around him. Their attitude was, he was a good man, he was our rabbi, he was our leader, he was our teacher. A few of them, like John, believed he was God. Only a few of them, though. They didn't know he was God as such. They knew he was the Messiah. They believed that. Then he was dead. So their attitude was, evil men ganged up on him. Evil men amongst the priests, and they delivered him to the Romans, and the Romans killed him at the behest of the Jewish authorities. It's fundamentally the same paradigm of judgment as it is on the Church today. What's happened to the Church today is that evil men have ganged up on it and tried to kill it off. and we've got to do something about it. And the disciples, I suppose, gathered in the upper room, hiding by themselves, saying, what are we going to do now? The parallel is perfect. But they were wrong. And then there was a scene outside Jerusalem where two disciples decided to get out of it. It was too discouraging. He promised everything. He promised to get rid of the Romans. He promised to found the state of Israel, and he promised to put them all on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes, and that Israel would be free and the Romans would go away. And their exile and their misery and their pain and their taxation by foreign, the ugly Romans would be all over. And he failed completely. He was captured like a rabbit in the garden. He was taken, they scourged the life out of him, they made a mockery of him, they sent him over to Herod and they had a big laugh, and they dressed him in a white robe, the white cloth of a madman, and brought him back to Pilate, who said, well, what do you want to do with him? They said, well, crucify him. Yeah, crucify him. Useless bit of humanity. Why bother about them? And they were going over all this, and they met this stranger walking with them towards the village where they were going for refuge, Emmaus. And they probably had girlfriends in Emmaus or something, their relatives. They wanted to get away from Jerusalem. And he was happy. And they said, now what's up with you? He said, well, what's up with you? Why have you got these long faces? And so they said, well, they're talking about this Jesus of Nazareth, man mighty in power and act, and we thought he was the Messiah, we thought he was going to liberate Israel and chase away the foreigners and make us free again and give us our temple back and give us our... And he said, and they said, he's dead. He's dead, buried. He's been bled like a pig. He's dead. It's all over. And he said to them, have you ever read Moses? I said, yeah, we read the cycle of the year. We read it in the synagogue. And you read Isaiah, and you've read Jeremiah, and you've read Ezekiel. You've read them all, haven't you? Well, what do they say about the Messiah? And he went through, one by one, David included the Psalms, and Isaiah, the suffering servant, and Jeremiah about being crucified, and Malachi, the prophet Malachi, went through them all and said, isn't it quite clear that the Messiah had to die? He had to suffer. He had to be disgraced. He had to be put in the tomb, not his. They had to count his bones. They had to pierce his side with a lance. And they had to laugh at him as useless and condemn him. And they said, yeah, that's true. So they didn't know what to think, so he said he pretended to go on, and they said, well, why don't you come have a glass of wine and a bit of bread, but the sun is setting and you can't walk much more, it'll be dark. So he did, and in the breaking of bread, the Sanctuary was Jesus. The phrase he used, though, was the important one. It was necessary. The word doesn't mean necessary. It behooved him. It was fitting that he so die. Now, do you remember when Jesus took Andrew, John, and Peter to the mountain of the Transfiguration table? And there in front of them, he was transfigured, his raiment, his clothes became white as snow, and he was talking with Moses and Elias. And when they were coming down, they saw all that, and then they felt they were completely overborne by this. They went into a sort of a coma, and they woke up, and he was stirring them and saying, wake up, it's all over. And coming down, he said, no, you tell nobody about this. We're going to Jerusalem, and the high priests and the rulers are going to crucify me. And Peter said, crucify you? No, you don't. We've just been talking with God and Moses and Elias, and you want us to think come on. And he said, you're a devil, Peter. You don't understand the things of man, of God. You're thinking like a man. He uses the same phrase as Luke uses in talking about the disciples going to the village of Emmaus. He said, it behooves me to be crucified. I must be in order to achieve my work. And then I will rule. Similarly with the church.
So the crisis that we're undergoing today is all part of God's plan.
That's right. It behooves us to go under. It behooves us to lose the organization. It is fitting that we go underground. It is fitting that we become laughable and marginalized. It is fitting that we become just hewers of wood and drawers of water. And
we'll understand all why when we go to our judgments then.
That's right. Not until then. No more than the disciples did, the Emmaus disciples did. And they, of course, could run back to Jerusalem and say, hey, we just saw him. They say, forget it, we've seen him too. He's been talking to Nigel and talking to his mother and talking to everybody else. They had the risen Christ. We still have the risen Christ, but it's in the invisible, behind the veils of the sacrament. The point I'm making about the condition of the church is that we can't look on it merely as the evil men have succeeded. They've really eviscerated the church. They've succeeded in overthrowing. No, they haven't. They fit into a divine plan. It behooves the church to be humiliated. And the organization we're talking about all the time, never talking about the mystical body, or the souls in purgatory, or the souls in heaven, or the souls on earth. We're talking about the organization. It no longer serves Christ's purpose. Apparently he's liquidating it without a scruple. He's allowed it to go under in France, in Italy, in Spain, in America, in Canada, in Ireland. He's allowed to go Belgium, Holland, Austria. Where has it not gone under? It's gone under everywhere. He allowed that. And therefore, if he wills it to happen in spite of his own intentions, just because he's given freedom of action to popes and priests and bishops and Catholics, and they misbehave themselves, he wills it. You must accept it and fight against it, do your best to overcome it, repair it, etc. But you must accept it as his will. It is his will. Otherwise it wouldn't happen. Similarly with the church. This is what I call the Emmaus factor. There's no doubt about it that the idea that we must suffer, the Messiah has to be crucified, has to die and be buried and covered with obloquy and disgraced and ruined in his reputation with the Jewish people at that time, and be humiliated as a felon and die with criminals. That is contrary to everything human, contrary to all our wishes. And by the way, let me say a word about it to bring home the horror of it all. We have descriptions of crucifixions in Roman literature. And one writer says that they always had one place, a high place, just outside the city walls, where they crucified the men. And he said that the characteristic, to paraphrase his Latin, the characteristic of all the crucifixion places was sanguis. Sanguis. Ubique sanguis. Blood. Blood. Everywhere blood. It smelt of blood. It was always bloody. Never washed down. And crows settled there and wild animals when people weren't there. And Jesus was crucified between two men. The curses, the smells, the groans, the pains, the laughter of the soldiers who had great fun with the whole thing was gruesome. It was a dreadful way to die. A dreadful way to die, and in every part of your body paining at the same time. And this horrible. There was blood everywhere. His blood was all over the legionaries that crucified him. Because you know the way they crucified you was that you carried your cross, which was a cross beam, and you were thrown on the ground. Your hands were nailed to that, while one legionary sat on your belly to quiet you. One sat on your feet, one sat on your chest, and one sat in the other hand while they nailed this hand. Then he transferred over and nailed the other hand. Then they lifted you up, nailed to the crossbeam, and they dropped it into the socket of this upright which was there permanently. Then they nailed your feet one by one. I mean, everybody was covered with blood. It was the blood of Jesus this time. But it was sanguis, ubique sanguis. Blood, everywhere blood, and the smell of it. And then all the prisoners defecated and urinated the moment they were hanging on the cross. They had no control at all. They vomited and retched. And other soldiers were casting lots and sitting down and watching. And the Bible says that they sat down and they watched Jesus. Eterun afton is the Greek. They watched him like you watch an animal. That's how he died. You must hold that God willed all that. You must hold that he willed all that. Similarly with the church. The sufferings we're going through, and the pain and the humiliation and the disruption and the disgrace and the irreverence and the blasphemy and the violation of all our rules, marriage rules and baptismal rules and communion rules and rules for children and rules for chastity, all that is willed by God. He's permissively allowing that, and we must accept it, because thus we enter into our glory. What does that teach us? It teaches this, that Christ has no further use for this organization. And he's not sending an earthquake to wipe out the whole thing. No, he's letting it liquidate itself. It's corrupt, and it's liquidating itself. What will come out of it? Oh, something I won't see. I doubt if you'll see it either, Bernard. You're too old. The new organization, such as we don't know what it's going to be like. We do not know what's going to be like. But he will create it, whole plot. And a new race will take over, who will not be blighted like our race, with our sins.
So it seems what's happening is much like the crucifixion and resurrection then of our Lord.
That's right. And then remember what happened. After Pentecost, the church went literally underground until the year 312. That was over 200 years later. God creates a little acorn and he spends 80 years making it to a huge oak tree. He is a person of infinite patience. And it doesn't matter how impatient we are, he's going to wait.
Now, could it be then that the fact that the church is being liquidated is a means of sowing the seeds for a revival or resurrection through perhaps the underground church?
Yeah, no doubt in my mind about it at all. In the meantime, what should be done will not be done.
I think, too, part of the perspective that Catholics have to have is when people talk, let's say, about the New World Order and the coming apostasy, they talk about it as if it's already, like it's coming up in the future.
That's right.
But don't we have to recognize that it's all, basically, most of it is already here?
It's here. We're in apostasy. And the New World Order is a fact, whether we like it or not. And all you've got to do is to look at, for instance, the behavior of the big important people like Maurice Strong and Kofi Annan, the head of the United Nations, and the other leaders of large-scale proposals, and it's the New World Order. It's dragooning us all, and we can't get out of it now. Whether we like it or not, the New World Order is here.
And how did we get from there to here? Because it all seems to have happened without most people even realizing it.
And without their consent.
Yes.
They never consented. But we were never asked about it. We were never asked. They don't ask us that.
But haven't people been a bit asleep in the past 30 years?
They have. They've trusted their legal representatives, their elected representatives. We have trusted them.
And we've trusted our parish priests and bishops.
That's right. We've trusted our cardinals, we've trusted our popes. We've trusted everybody. But we can't go on trusting, we must examine them. Remember Reagan had this thing of trust but verify? Remember he used to repeat these two Russian words?
Right.
We Americans used to hear continually. Yes, I'll trust the Russians, but I'm going to verify what they say. When they say we've shifted missiles, okay, I believe you, but I'm going to verify have you shifted them. So similarly with this, you have to verify always. It's extraordinary what you have to verify. The most extraordinary things you have to verify sometimes. Because something can be put on you without your knowing it. And something is being put over on us already in the Catholic Church. As I say, when I talk to people, and I talk to them continually, in this diocese alone, they're always saying, "You're kidding. I didn't know that." It's true, but they're always using. They don't realize it. They don't read, and their own priest don't tell them. The priest just keeps giving the same pap. And they only talking to somebody like me or some writer or some theologian standing up on his own, they suddenly realize there's a big change taking place, and they weren't told about it.
How should Catholics maintain the kind of awareness that they'll actually see what is happening? Because there seems to be a difficulty with that many Catholics and other Christians are experiencing. They're not really grasping the full reality. We talked about, let's say, how some of the comfortable, middle-of-the-road Catholics are failing to see the whole picture. What should Catholics do so that they are more aware of what's happening and that they can see really what's going on? They're not like the disciples that failed to recognize our Lord.
Exactly. They'll have to get the newspapers, books, magazines. They'll have to listen to Mother Angelica. I don't hold for everything Mother Angelica says, But she gives a point of view which is more healthy and Catholic, and they have to read things like The Wanderer, they have to read things like The Remnant, they have to read some Catholic magazines, they have to, and then read catechisms, have their own catechisms, say the Baltimore Catechism, or the Catechism of the Council of Trent, and then good spiritual books. There's a plethora of Christian books, Catholic books. If they want to get them, they can get them.
But now it takes a search.
Yes, it takes your personal effort. The books are not expensive. The papers are not expensive. It does take an effort. The bishop and the priest can't be trusted. Just cannot be trusted. Love them and finance them if they're worthy of it, but feed them, but don't trust them to give you the full doctrine until you are verified. When you're verified, then you can say, yeah, he's all right, or he's skew-wit on this, but he's okay on that. Yeah, because Bernard, I never thought, when I was young, your age, I never thought I'd come to the point of saying that, no, you instinctively distrust a priest or a bishop until you verify. If you said that to me when I was 25, 35, I would have been shocked. How could you make that rule? But that's the situation today.
And that maybe would describe why this crisis has come upon us, and we didn't fight it at the time, and now it's like on appearances it almost looks like it's too late because people trusted and that they misused that trust.
And they've lost the trust. They've lost the trust of the people. They have, really. And you see, the dreadful thing is that there's now so many well-publicized cases, say, of priestly molestation of children, that instinctively people see a clerical figure and say to themselves, I wonder, is he also a molester? And there's a convent of Dominican friars up the road here from me, St. Vincent Terrace, and some of the older men told me it was very embarrassing because in the street some drunk would say, hey, you're one of the drunken, you're one of the molesters, aren't you? You fiddle with little boys' privates, don't you? In the middle of the street or in the subway. It's dreadful to be accosted, but that's what the priest molesters have done. And every priest is suspect now. Is suspect. Now, of course, we know that some bishops don't want vocations. They're discouraging vocations because they don't want priests any longer. But those are the apostates. That's their function for Satan and for Lucifer, is to discourage priesthood. Now, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that the church is going to be marginalized more and more. The organized church is going to have its usual crowd of people, never very great. It's not going to have much religious influence. It has very little grace, supernatural grace about it. It's going to have less and less vocations, and they're going to have priestless parishes. They have them already, and they're going to have much more than that. And therefore they're going to be diminished in number and in revenue. And the religious orders are going to go on having very few vocations, the Jesuits. They ordained one man last year or something like that. Something dreadful. And the Carmelites and Dominicans are the same thing, a dearth of people. And as for the nuns, forget it, except for certain religious orders. We're not going to have any nuns orders, religious orders. After about 20 years there will be only one or two big ones, and then a sprinkling of small ones, and it's all over. We have no orders of nursing sisters or missionary sisters coming up. They're dying out. But here perhaps is, in spite of this hostile environment that we're in, here's perhaps the final lesson that at least I received from Windswept House, is that amidst all the corruption and all the destruction, God's grace was continuing to work, because we saw, for example, let's say the American diplomat Appleyard being opened to God's grace. Sure he was. Grace is abounding, there's no doubt about that. I don't think there are less good people, there's less grace in the world. It's just that the Catholic Church is not functioning. It's as a church. It's not functioning any longer, except to be a socio-political vehicle. But it's not really doing its job. And that probably is, again, to be examined in the light of the Emmaus factor. This is what Christ has willed to happen. This is what He's given us. We can all save our souls. We know what to do. And if we don't know what to do, we can find out about it without any difficulty if we want to.